Welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive, designed specifically for you.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a really incredible topic.
It really is. So I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you're settling in to read this sweeping ancient epic.
Right.
You're turning the pages of a text that's renowned for its legendary heroes, its formidable adversaries, and this celebrated alliance of monkey warriors.
The classic mythological package.
Exactly. You are completely immersed in the narrative and all that rich mythology, but then, right in the middle of this epic poetry, you stumble upon something entirely unexpected.
Something that really doesn't fit the fantasy genre.
Right. You find this remarkably precise description of the Earth's hydrological cycle.
Yeah.
And then you turn a few more pages, and suddenly you're looking at an extensive map of global topography, complete with, details on geothermal geology.
It is a striking contrast. I mean, truly fascinating. You approach the material expecting a myth, and you discover what amounts to a rigorous empirical record encoded in verse.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we are exploring today. Our sources for this deep dive are translated excerpts from the Kishkindha Kanda.
Right, the Kishkindha Kanda.
For those who might need a quick refresher, that is Book 4 of the ancient Indian epic, the Valmiki Ramayana. And today, we are leaning fully into the mission of simplified awakening. We are taking ancient wisdom and we're decoding it scientifically.
We're looking past that mythological surface.
Yes. We're exploring how this ancient story maps out the water cycle, global geography, intuitive physics. We'll be working to really separate the beautiful poetry from the rigorous empirical observation.
Which requires us to read the text with a very specific lens.
Right.
We are looking at how ancient scholars use the vehicle of epic storytelling as basically a sophisticated data storage system.
Oh, I love that way of putting it.
Yeah, they were preserving their understanding of the natural world for future generations.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get to the heavy science, we need to set the scene so you know exactly where we are in the story.
That's a good idea.
So, Sri Rama and his brother Lakshmana are on this desperate search. Rama's wife, Sita, has been abducted, and their search brings them to the beautiful, lotus-covered Pampa Lake. And it's here that they cross paths with the Monkey King, Sugriva.
And it's worth noting the psychological state of these characters when they meet, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sugriva is currently living in exile on Mount Rishimukha, and he is terrified. He thinks Rama and Lakshmana have been sent by his hostile brother Vali to assassinate him.
Yeah, he's incredibly paranoid.
Because of that paranoia, Sugriva's brilliant minister, Hanuman, goes out to evaluate the newcomers. But he doesn't just, walk up and introduce himself.
No, he's way too smart for that.
Right. Hanuman approaches them in the clever disguise of a mendicant, a wandering ascetic, to ascertain their true intentions without revealing his own allegiances.
Right. Hanuman is highly cautious, which really establishes him early on as this character of deep intellect and strategy. And once he realizes Rama and Lakshmana are noble and that they actually require assistance themselves, he reveals his true form.
They forge an alliance.
Right. Sri Rama helps Sugriva defeat his brother, Vali, in battle. Vali is slain, and Sugriva reclaims his rightful throne in the magnificent city of Kishkindha.
And so at this point, you would naturally think...
Right, you'd think the army of monkeys will immediately march out to find Sita.
Right, but they don't.
They don't. The entire epic quest simply grinds to a halt. And the reason? The monsoon season has arrived.
And this narrative pause is absolutely crucial for our analysis today.
Yeah.
Rama and Lakshmana are forced to wait out the heavy rainy season on Mount Prasarvana, and this wait serves as a profound thematic transition in the text.
It totally shifts gears.
It does. We step away from the political intrigue, the warfare, and the immediate grief, and we enter into this period of deep, systematic observation of the natural world.
Right.
The pacing of the story intentionally slows down, creating the space needed for the authors to meticulously document their environment.
And we see this so clearly when we get to Canto 28. Sri Rama is describing the onset of the rainy season to his brother. And, I was expecting a poetic metaphor here.
Sure.
But what he actually describes is surprisingly clinical. Here's where it gets really interesting. I have to read this specific quote from the text.
Go for it.
He says, quote, "Having sucked up the water of the oceans through the sun's rays, the sky is giving birth to life-giving showers."
What's fascinating here is the precise identification of a causal loop.
Yeah.
The text doesn't attribute the rain merely to the winds of a storm deity. It explicitly identifies evaporation, the sun's rays, literally drawing up the water from the oceans, as the direct physical cause of the precipitation.
It's wild.
It is. It is a closed-loop hydrological system being described thousands of years before the formal scientific revolution.
I read that quote and I thought, okay, sure, it's a beautiful image, but let me play the skeptic for a second.
Always a good idea.
Is it possible that this is just poetic intuition? Like, did they actually understand the mechanics of this, or did it just sound profound to say the sun drinks the ocean?
That is always a fair question when dealing with ancient texts. However, what elevates this from poetic intuition to empirical observation is the surrounding context.
Okay.
The text doesn't stop at evaporation. It elaborates on the gestation period of the clouds. It states that the sky carries this moisture, quote, as a fetus carried in the womb for 9 months, from October to June.
Which is such a striking biological analogy.
It is, and it brilliantly masks a highly accurate meteorological observation. The Indian monsoon doesn't just materialize overnight.
Right.
The text is describing the long-term seasonal buildup of atmospheric moisture. It takes months of solar radiation evaporating ocean water, storing it in the atmosphere, and shifting wind patterns until the conditions are finally right for the massive release of the monsoon. They understood the long-term atmospheric mechanics leading up to the seasonal rains, which points to sustained, multi-generational observation rather than just, a lucky poetic guess.
And then, when the rain finally hits the ground, the text gives us this observation on the transfer of thermal energy.
Yes.
It describes how the Earth, which had been, quote, tormented with sunshine, is suddenly immersed in fresh rainwater, and because of this, it begins radiating heat.
Which perfectly describes the release of sensible heat.
Right.
If you've ever stood on a sun-baked road or a dry field when a sudden summer rain hits, you know exactly what this means.
Oh yeah, you can literally feel it.
You can feel the heat rising off the ground, often accompanied by a visible vapor. The ancient text is documenting the physical transfer of energy.
Amazing.
The Earth absorbs solar radiation, becoming baked or tormented, and the sudden introduction of cooler water causes a rapid release of that stored thermal energy into the atmosphere.
So the text establishes that these authors deeply understood the sky and the weather. But when the monsoon finally breaks and Sugriva can send his armies out, we realize their knowledge wasn't just limited to looking up.
No, not all.
They were equally rigorous when looking across the globe.
Yes. This transition happens across cantos 40 to 43. Sugriva, now back on his throne, fulfills his promise to Rama. He calls his massive army together and sends out search parties to the 4 corners of the earth.
Okay.
And as Sugriva gives these search parties their marching orders, the text shifts from a local narrative into an extensive geographical atlas.
It really does. He starts naming specific rivers with remarkable detail. He sends troops to the Narmada, the Godavari, the Kaveri.
Specific landmarks.
Yeah, and he specifically mentions the River Sun, noting its reddish waters, which likely refers to the heavy sediment load that river carries.
Exactly.
And I love how he describes the river Tamraparni. He says it enters the sea even as a beloved, youthful woman would meet her darling.
While that is decidedly poetic, it's also geographically telling.
How?
It describes the confluence dynamics of a lively, fast-flowing river merging smoothly into the vast ocean, capturing the nature of its specific estuary.
Ah, I see.
But the geography they are mapping extends far beyond the local river systems of the Indian subcontinent. As Sugriva directs the search parties further out, the text delves into what we would now consider deep oceanography.
The descriptions here definitely get wilder, but they maintain this strange specificity.
They do.
Sugriva describes crossing different oceans to his troops. He mentions an ocean of milk and an ocean containing fresh water.
Right.
Now, initially, an ocean of milk sounds like pure fantasy. But reading through the lens of empirical observation, what could that actually represent?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global oceanic phenomena, there are a few compelling possibilities.
Okay.
An ocean of milk could describe the Milky Seas effect, which is a rare documented condition where massive expanses of the ocean are illuminated by bioluminescent bacteria, making the water look like glowing milk at night. Alternatively, it could refer to glacial rock flour. In certain polar or glacial regions, the fine sediment grinds off glaciers and turns the coastal waters a distinct, opaque, milky white.
That makes perfect sense. And the ocean containing fresh water.
That could easily describe areas where massive river systems like the Amazon or the Ganges-Brahmaputra empty into the ocean, creating a massive plume of fresh water that rides over the denser saltwater for hundreds of miles.
Right, right.
Or it could refer to regions near melting ice shelves where salinity gradients drop significantly. They are observing regions of the ocean that behave differently than standard saltwater.
But the detail that really made me pause is the description of something called the Vadavamukha.
Yes, the Vadavamukha.
Sugriva tells the search party heading south that they will encounter this. The text describes the Vadavamukha as a huge submarine fire located far to the south.
Right.
It says it is shaped like a mare's mouth, and it claims this underwater fire uses the ocean's water and everything in it as its fuel. A fire burning underwater, fueled by the water itself.
This is perhaps one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for advanced ancient geographical knowledge in the entire text.
Really?
What Sugriva is describing is a clear ancient understanding of submarine volcanic activity or hydrothermal vents.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate again. Submarine volcanoes at the South Pole.
I know, it sounds crazy.
Isn't it highly probable that a storyteller simply imagined the most paradoxical, terrifying concept possible? Fire thriving inside water, and just happened to guess right about something that actually exists? Why do we assume this is empirical data?
That is a critical question. The mythological imagination is vast, and coincidences do happen. However, the key here lies in the specificity and the mechanism described.
Okay.
It's not just a magical fire and water. The text specifies that the water itself acts as fuel or is consumed by the process.
Right.
Modern oceanography knows that along the tectonic ridges deep beneath the ocean, massive hydrothermal vents and underwater volcanoes spew superheated magma. The extreme heat interacts directly with the freezing ocean water, instantly vaporizing it into supercritical fluid and driving massive chemical reactions. The visual of a fiery mouth on the ocean floor consuming the sea around it is an incredibly apt description of a deep-sea geothermal vent.
And the fact that they place this specifically in the deep southern oceans near the pole, where tectonic activity along the Antarctic ridges is incredibly fierce, it suggests they aren't just making up scary obstacles.
Exactly. It raises an important question about the extent of their exploratory capabilities or the depth of their historical memory.
Wow.
To know about deep-sea geothermal activity at the southern poles, you either need advanced exploratory seafaring or you are relying on an incredibly long, preserved oral tradition of global oceanic phenomena. Either way, the knowledge base is remarkably sophisticated.
And it's not just the big explosive phenomena like volcanoes.
Yeah.
The verbal map is incredibly precise right down to the local plant life.
Yes, the botany.
In the instructions given to the Northern Search Party, Sugriva tells them to look out for a specific river called the Seloda. He says on the banks of this river they will find the Kichaka bamboos.
Right.
The text explicitly describes these specific bamboos as being, quote, hollow within, and as such make a rattling or whistling sound when the wind passes through them.
That is botanical specificity at its finest. It shows a level of observation that rivals modern field biology.
Definitely.
They aren't just saying, oh, you will reach a forest. They are identifying a specific species of flora located in a specific river basin and documenting its unique acoustic properties based on its internal physical structure. That is rigorous categorization encoded right into the epic.
It's like having a GPS and a nature documentary narrated to you all at once.
It really is.
So the search parties are dispatched with these incredibly detailed maps. And this brings us to Canto 67 and to one of the most famous moments in the entire epic.
Hanuman preparing to cross the ocean.
Exactly. He's preparing to leap to the island of Lanka to find Sita.
This is a pivotal moment in the narrative, and again, the text shifts gears. We move from geography and botany into the realm of physical laws, specifically the intuitive physics of motion, mass, and kinetic energy.
Typically, mythological texts rely on divine intervention to explain flight-like, a complete suspension of natural laws.
Right, magic.
You'd expect Hanuman to just float up into the air. But what stands out in Canto 67 is that the authors refuse to suspend those laws. Instead, they amplify them.
Precisely.
The text describes a monumental, violent transfer of physical force. When Hanuman prepares to launch himself from Mount Mahendra, he presses down with his feet. And the text says the immense pressure was so great that the huge mountain screamed.
And that scream is the sound of profound structural failure. The text elaborates that the masses of rocks disintegrated under his weight and the trees violently shook.
Yeah.
But the most physics-grounded detail is that the immense pressure Hanuman exerted downward actually forced the mountain to release new springs of water.
He literally squeezed the ground away.
Right out of the solid rock.
Out of the solid rock with his legs.
Exactly. This demonstrates an intuitive, grounded understanding of kinetic energy transfer and hydrostatic pressure. The authors recognize that monumental upward movement requires a monumental downward transfer of force.
Newton's third law, essential.
Basically, yes. To achieve the massive kinetic energy required to leap across a sea, Hanuman had to exert an equally massive downward pressure. The text meticulously details the physical consequences of that force. The crumbling rock matrix, the seismic tremors, and the compression of the water table forcing springs to the surface. It's an analysis of mass and pressure, not just magic.
Then we get to the leap itself. Hanuman actually calculates his trajectory before he jumps.
He does.
He claims he can cover 10,000 yojanas in a single leap. To put that in perspective, that is roughly 80,000 miles.
An incredible distance.
And he describes what this extreme velocity will look like to an observer. He says he will envelop the sky as a flash of lightning, and that his passage through the heavens will resemble the Milky Way.
He is describing the visual effects of traveling at extreme speeds through the atmosphere.
Right?
When a comet or a meteorite enters the atmosphere at high velocity, it creates a streak of light due to aerodynamic friction. It burns brightly, much like a continuous flash of lightning or a miniature Milky Way.
Wow.
The authors understood that moving a mass at that extreme speed wouldn't just be a fast blur, it would generate a visible, luminous trail across the sky. They are describing the heat and light of aerodynamic friction using the celestial comparisons available to them.
So what does this all mean? We started by talking about a story featuring a monkey army, an abducted princess, and a demon king.
Right.
But diving into the source material, the Kishkindha Kanda reveals itself to be something entirely different. It's not just a chapter in a mythological narrative. It serves as a meticulously recorded encyclopedia of ancient scientific knowledge.
It really does.
We've seen it outline the modern hydrological cycle, complete with evaporation and sensible heat. We've traced a global topography that documents hydrothermal vents. And we've looked at the intuitive physics of kinetic energy and aerodynamic friction.
It reminds us that knowledge is most valuable when understood from multiple perspectives.
Absolutely.
It is easy to dismiss ancient texts as mere fairy tales or religious allegory. But by reading these texts with a scientific lens, we realize that our ancestors were brilliant, empirical observers of the natural world.
They really were.
They didn't have our modern scientific instruments, but they possessed critical thinking and a deep understanding of natural laws. They encoded their research into epic poetry because rhyme, meter, and compelling narratives were the most effective ways to ensure this vast encyclopedia of knowledge survived through the ages, passed down from memory to memory intact.
It's the ultimate data storage system, wrapping hard data in an unforgettable story.
Very well said.
Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive. We've covered a vast amount of ground today, from the water cycle to the mechanics of a supersonic leap. But before you go, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the authors of the Valmiki Ramayana could rigorously map the mechanics of evaporation, cloud gestation, and submarine volcanoes thousands of years before the scientific revolution, what other so-called mythological monsters or miracles in ancient texts around the world are actually just precise, natural scientific phenomena, patiently waiting for us to finally decode them?
A fascinating question to carry with you.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep diving deep.